My name is Emily Carter, a 35-year-old real estate investor living in Portland, Oregon. I have always believed myself to be an independent woman, in control of my life and especially family-oriented. Everything in my life still operates in a stable, tight orbit like a Swiss watch. The cool mornings of Portland, the smell of rotting maple leaves in the wind, and the aroma of coffee wafting from the small shop at the end of the street often bring me a rare sense of peace. The quiet suburbs with rustic wooden houses are still the place I seek after busy days with business deals. But then, that peace suddenly turns to dust when the screeching police siren tears through the cold gray afternoon. I was stunned. My feet turned to stone, standing motionless in front of my own house, an old bungalow in Laurelhurst where I had poured all my heart, money, and memories into. A neighborhood security guard, his uniform stiff and his features like bronze, blocked the entrance. His eyes were cold and alert, as if I were an intruder in broad daylight. "Ma'am, what are you doing here?" "There's a suspicious person reported in the area," he asked, his voice deadpan. My ears rang. A suspicious person? Me? This is my house. I tried to speak, to find my breath and my voice, but my throat was dry, and the words were stuck. Humiliation, shock, and a simmering anger began to flare up deep inside me. And then I saw her, Olivia, my brother Nathan's new wife. She stood there in the large living room window, her cold gaze locked on me. There was a cruel, faint smile on her lips, both arrogant and provocative. That smile was like a dagger piercing my heart, piercing the hard shell I had built up over the years. It was not just a taunt, it was a cold declaration of power, an arrogant assertion that she had won a war I had not even known I was involved in. In that moment, I understood. This was no longer a misunderstanding. This was a deep family conflict, a secret battle for identity and ownership. Olivia didn't need to say a word. A simple brazen wave was enough for me to understand. It was the signal, a silent message to the guard telling him to stop me. She was declaring that she and Nathan were in charge, and I, Emily Carter, the rightful owner, the one who had cared for every brick in this house, was the one being evicted. My blood boiled. I stared into Olivia's eyes, trying to convey my anger and betrayal, but her eyes remained cold, and that smile, that calculating smile, did not disappear. When the security guard asked me to show my identification and proof of ownership, I felt like I was being forced into a ridiculous and cruel play. It was so absurd that I wanted to scream. "I am the owner. This is my house." I trembled to speak, but the sound that came out was choked by anger and humiliation. The security guard remained firm and coldly replied, "I'm sorry, miss. Without clear evidence, we will have to ask you to leave." That moment, only a few minutes, was enough to blow up all the conflicts that had been simmering for so long. This was no longer a family affair. This was betrayal, a broken mask, deep cracks in the blood relationship. I had loved and trusted Nathan, my only brother. We had grown up together through so much hardship. But where was he in the midst of all this? Why had he remained silent, letting Olivia run wild? How could things between us have fallen to this point? Was there any way to save it? Those questions kept gnawing at me, tearing me apart like 1,000 broken pieces of glass. I stood there, in the fading Portland sunset, feeling like the world was collapsing beneath my feet. We did not grow up in peace. There was no full night's sleep in the warm winter nights, no summer vacations filled with laughter. But it was that adversity that shaped Nathan and me into two indomitable people. Two souls who knew how to rely on each other to stand firm in life. We lived in a working-class neighborhood in Portland, where every penny earned had to be exchanged for sweat, sometimes even silent sacrifice. My parents divorced when I was very young, leaving us with an unfillable void, both financially and spiritually. My mother, a small but resilient woman, raised 2 children on her own with everything she had. I still clearly remember the image of her returning home on cold winter evenings, her slender figure bent over with exhaustion. But in her eyes, there was still a glimmer of fire, the light of hope, of unconditional love for her children. Nathan was 2 years older than me, And during those lonely childhood years, he was my closest friend, my little sky in an all too small world. Together, we explored every nook and cranny of our old neighborhood, from the rusty swings in the park to the deserted reading room at the community library, where we would escape on hot summer afternoons to flip through books and nurture our first dreams. There were no secrets, no distance, just absolute trust and a rare sense of security. Nathan was always the model big brother, smart, funny, and able to make me laugh even on the darkest days. He had a big heart and big ambitions, always dreaming of a life beyond the slum, of a world where he could reach greater things. As for me, in every breath of my childhood, I knew early on that poverty is not a sentence. It is a motivation. I not only wanted to escape poverty, but also to gain self-determination, peace, and freedom for myself and my loved ones. I believed that success is not simply wealth, but the ability to stand firm, to master life, and not to bow down to anyone. Therefore, I studied tirelessly, took on all kinds of odd jobs to collect every little opportunity, with only one belief, that hard work will open the way. Nathan, on the other hand, had another obsession, deeper, more nebulous. He wanted more than just to live better. He wanted recognition, respect, admiration. He craved a higher place in society, something beyond his background. I remember vividly the day Nathan graduated from college. We had hoped for a new start. A prestigious local company had offered him a job, a stable and clear opportunity to build a career. I was overjoyed, convinced that this was a turning point for both him and our family. But Nathan refused. He said the environment was not up to par, that he couldn't work in a place that didn't match his aspirations. I was stunned, partly surprised, partly disappointed. It was the first time I realized that Nathan had a rift inside him, a deep insecurity about his own worth, about being looked down upon by others. At the time, I didn't realize that irreconcilable differences had already formed between us, about how we understood success, about how we defined the value of life. I was after stability, about solidity. He was after the spotlight, about entering a world we had only dared to see from afar. Over time, those differences did not fade, but became sharper, smoldering, forming the foundation for complex conflicts later on. Insecurity about status and reputation had taken root in Nathan's soul like a poisonous vine, waiting to pull down everything he tried to build. I used to worry that it would cause him to make wrong choices, bosses. Choices that would not only harm him, but also affect the people who loved him most. Now looking back, I know I was right. That seed, once rooted, would grow into disaster. And that is exactly what I was facing. After years of continuous learning, effort, and sacrifice, even the simplest things for work, I have gradually built a solid position in the real estate industry. It was not a path filled with roses. It was full of sleepless nights, bitter failures, and suffocatingly lonely moments. But I always believed that if I was persistent enough and kept a long-term vision, success would be a worthy reward. I started with small projects, accumulated little by little experience and finances, and rose step by step with unwavering faith. Each successful deal was like a ladder, bringing me closer to the dream I had cherished since childhood, to be the master of my own destiny. And then, on a rare sunny day in the heart of Portland, I signed the contract to buy my fourth home. It was a historic bungalow in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, a place that exudes both elegance and tranquility, a gem in the heart of the city. The house's architecture blends classic charm with rustic warmth, with a small garden shaded by trees and wide windows that welcome the soft light of autumn mornings. For me, owning this house was more than just a real estate transaction. It was a testament to perseverance, a living testament to how a girl who grew up in poverty could still achieve what seemed impossible. I envisioned a peaceful home, a place where I could quietly retreat from the hustle and bustle of business, a place where my heart could rest. But while my career was at its peak, Nathan's life was in a slump. After losing his job at a small marketing firm, he was unemployed for a long time. I knew he tried. He sent out dozens of applications, met with recruiters, but luck had eluded him. Nathan lived in a cramped suburban apartment with yellow walls and a perpetually gloomy atmosphere. He had a growing credit card debt, a silent shadow hanging over his life, I would call him often to cheer him up, to try to shed some light on his increasingly depressed mood, but I could hear something crumbling behind each sentence, a kind of weariness that I couldn't name. Unable to stand idly by, I told myself I had to do something. For me, family had always been the compass that guided every decision. The house in Laurelhurst was still empty, with no specific plans for its use. And then, one time, sitting quietly in front of the large window overlooking the red maple trees, the idea of inviting Nathan to move there suddenly flashed like a flash of light. I asked him to meet me at the familiar coffee shop, the place we had been attached to since our college days. "Hey, Nathan," I began, trying to keep my voice casual. "The house in Laurelhurst is empty. I thought you could move in and help me manage it. No need to worry about rent. Just look after it, maintain it, make sure everything is stable. It would be your own private space for you to focus on starting over." Nathan raised his head, his eyes wide, the first time I'd seen a light in them in weeks. "Really, Emily? You're letting me live there?" His voice was hesitant, somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. "Not for free," I smiled. "We'll sign a lease, a nominal fee, just to make it legally binding. But it'll be low within your means. I need the paperwork, and I think that's good for both of us." The offer, to me, was a simple but heartfelt gesture, a way to help Nathan find his footing, have some space to recover, think, and rebuild what had been broken. But as a businessman, I also knew that kindness is no substitute for transparency. My lawyer had always advised me not to let personal feelings blur the lines of the law. So even though the contract was symbolic, I still wanted everything to be clear, to protect both sides. But then I could not have imagined that it was that dependence that changed our relationship. Nathan was no longer the confident, steady brother I knew. Gradually, the gap between the helper and the one being helped began to appear. Vague expectations, nameless silences gradually stretched the bond between us. I thought that just having clear documents was enough, thinking that our brotherly love would be strong in the face of any challenge. But I was wrong. When the imbalance began to erode self-esteem, and Nathan's simmering insecurities were not healed, the relationship broke down. From the silence, the seeds of conflict began to sprout, quietly but persistently, until the day we no longer recognized each other. The days Nathan spent living in the bungalow were so strangely peaceful, almost too perfect even, that I didn't notice the cracks that were beginning to appear. He took care of the house with a dedication that was surprising. He paid attention to every little detail, from replacing the stained glass windows to personally painting the entire exterior in a modern blue-gray, giving it a bright and fresh look. The small front and back gardens were always neatly trimmed. The rose bushes I had planted were now blooming under his patient care. Nathan even personally repaired small broken items that I hadn't noticed. He turned the house into not just a place to live, but a work of his heart, a quiet place to restore faith and purpose in life. I still keep the habit of visiting him every week. Every Thursday night, we meet at a familiar restaurant in the Old Quarter, or simply cook together at the bungalow. We spend hours reminiscing about our childhood, laughing at our naughty antics, or telling each other happy and sad stories about work and life. Nathan is always an engaging storyteller, and I am never impatient to listen. In those moments, I feel a rare peace. I used to believe that our feelings had entered a stage of maturity, that the stormy past had been closed, giving way to a warm and close future. But that peace of mind blinded me. I had not made it clear that the arrangement was temporary. I had never set a specific time frame for Nathan's stay, nor had I shared my long-term plans for the house. In my mind, this was a short-term fix, a crutch to help him get back on his feet and move on. I assumed he understood that too, that when he found a steady job, he would leave, buy a house, and build a life of his own. But I was wrong. This ambiguity created misaligned expectations about the house's future. Nathan started talking about owning his own home. He mentioned the neighborhoods he wanted to live in, the beautiful houses he wanted to build, and even asked me about reputable banks and loan procedures. I was so happy to hear him share. I thought Nathan was finally moving towards independence, that he had regained his confidence and was taking the initiative to chart his own path. I didn't hesitate to encourage him to explore and consider his options. But there was one thing Nathan never told me: the reality of his finances. He was still struggling under the weight of credit card debt, and his income from his part-time job was barely enough to cover his basic needs. All the talk about his dream of owning his own home was just a dream that had yet to materialize. He hid his difficulties, perhaps because he didn't want me to worry, or perhaps because he felt guilty about his own failure. The lack of clarity about the house plans, combined with Nathan's lack of transparency about our finances, was like a ticking time bomb in our relationship. I thought everything was going smoothly, that our brotherhood was strong enough to withstand any challenge. But underneath, misunderstandings were taking root, unspoken expectations that became invisible walls between us. I couldn't have imagined that my kindness and trust had inadvertently created a gap, an easily exploited fissure, pushing us to the brink of an unforeseen conflict. Nathan's life took a turn for the worse when he met Olivia. It was at a marketing conference in Seattle, where, according to Nathan, he was instantly drawn to the sharp, ambitious, and undeniably charming communications executive. Olivia came from West Hills, Portland's most exclusive neighborhood, where mansions are hidden behind iron gates and rows of ancient trees. I had a vague sense of unease when Nathan first mentioned her. Nathan, who had always been reserved about his love life, was now falling too fast. Just a few months after their first meeting, they announced their engagement. It had all happened so quickly. I began to wonder, did Nathan really know this woman? Or was he just caught up in the spotlight and status Olivia brought? Olivia was completely different from the image I had of Nathan's life partner. She had a perfect appearance, a luxurious voice, and an aristocratic aura that radiated in every gesture. But what made me wary was the desire to live in luxury that was always evident in her eyes, an undisguised desire. Olivia loved to talk about Michelin-starred restaurants, foreign vacations, and the expensive branded items she owned like trophies. The pressure to maintain that perfect image quickly weighed on Nathan's shoulders. I knew he had always felt inferior about his background, always longed to reach a higher social status. And now it seemed Olivia had turned that desire into an obsession. Nathan changed. From the way he dressed, the way he talked, and even the way he presented himself to others. A new version of him gradually emerged, polished, elegant but unfamiliar. A Nathan who was no longer himself, but a version edited to fit Olivia's desired model. Then, the first signs of a rift appeared, directly related to the house I owned. During a seemingly innocent family dinner, in the midst of everyone's intimate conversation, Olivia suddenly spoke up. "I think we should knock down the wall between the kitchen and the living room. It will open up more space. And if possible, renovate the bathroom, turn it into a mini spa." She continued, her voice full of excitement. "This is our house after all, right?" The two words "us" sounded like a slap to my ears. I was stunned. She said it so naturally, as if ownership was a given. But what shocked me more was Nathan's reaction. He sat there next to Olivia, smiling and nodding, completely unconvinced or unconvinced. "You're right, honey. This house needs a makeover," he said lightly. A chill crept through me. Did Olivia really not know that this house didn't belong to them? Or did she know and choose to ignore it? And Nathan? Why had he kept quiet? Why had he let her think and say it in front of me? That this was their house. I was starting to feel deeply concerned, not only because of the rapid pace of their relationship, but also because of Olivia's increasingly obvious possessiveness of something that wasn't hers. Still, I tried to stay calm. I trusted Nathan. I thought he would come clean, tell Olivia that the house was just a temporary residence. I waited for an explanation, a simple rebuttal. But no, Nathan remained silent. Meanwhile, Olivia kept suggesting expensive renovation plans, as if the house had been theirs all along. Olivia's arrival had not only turned Nathan's life upside down, it had also upset the delicate balance between us. Our relationship had already been strained by our different visions of success and values. Now it was stretched to the limit. Nathan's ambiguity, combined with Olivia's increasingly overwhelming expectations, had ignited the smoldering flames of an unprecedented conflict. A storm was brewing, and I, helpless, could only watch, waiting for the inevitable. In the heart of bustling Portland, Nathan and Olivia's wedding took place in a lavish hotel where every detail was choreographed like a grand play. Gorgeous, flawless, and without room for error. Olivia was the one behind every detail, from the delicate lace wedding dress to the flowers on the tables to the carefully selected dishes on the menu. Everything had to be absolutely perfect, a living manifesto of her social aspirations. I attended as the groom's sister, trying to keep my face impassive, even as my heart was in turmoil. I was happy for Nathan because he had found love, but I couldn't shake the unease I felt when I looked at Olivia, a woman so beautiful, so well groomed, but whose eyes sometimes seemed cold and calculating. Soon after the wedding, changes began to take place in the bungalow, swift and unannounced, leaving me with a feeling of unease creeping into every corner of my mind. Olivia began what she called a living space refresh. First came the replacement of all the old furniture I had lovingly selected. The rustic wooden chairs, the beige linen sofa I loved, all were pushed out in favor of cold, unwelcoming modern pieces. The gentle landscape paintings were taken down, replaced by dark, tasteless abstractions. Worse, she did it all without consulting me. Not a phone call, not a text message. I was the owner of the house, but I seemed to have been left out of the decision-making process. I tried to tell myself that maybe she was just trying to give the house a new look, or that Nathan had been clear about the circumstances of the loan, and Olivia thought she was helping me increase the value of the property. But deep down, I knew that was just an excuse, because she acted so confident, so natural, as if the entire space was her own property. One evening, when I stopped by to visit, Olivia was enthusiastically describing her plans for a new kitchen system. I found a great interior design firm. They can turn this old kitchen into a classy, functional space. It'll cost a pretty penny, but I think it's totally worth it. After all, it's our joint property. Right, Nathan? She said, her voice almost cloyingly sweet, but behind it was a firm statement of ownership. Nathan, as usual, just smiled and nodded, not saying anything to clarify. Nathan's silence was like a sharp knife that cut deep into my heart. I tried to contain my anger, but inside I was raging. My brother, the man I had once trusted completely, was now hiding something from his new wife. He wasn't telling her the truth, that the house wasn't his, much less theirs. Worse, I began to fear that he might have lied, leading Olivia to believe that it was his personal property. I couldn't believe Nathan would go so far. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a blatant, calculated deception. I felt deeply betrayed. I had reached out to Nathan when he was at his worst, putting my trust in him as a matter of course. But now he had left me in a mess where I was both an outsider and a victim. Olivia's increasingly obvious possessiveness, coupled with Nathan's stubborn silence, made me question everything. Everything I had believed about brotherhood and honesty was slowly breaking apart. I suddenly realized that our relationship was degenerate, rotting bit by bit, and if I did nothing, it would sweep away everything I had held dear. The conflict was no longer a simmer. It was an unstoppable storm. I had believed that everything could be resolved with gentleness, with family affection and understanding, but Olivia had shown me that belief was an illusion. One gray morning, I stopped by the bungalow to check on some important papers that had been sent there. But as I inserted the key into the lock, I stopped. A brand new lock, cold and unfamiliar, lay before me. My heart clenched. This was no longer a small change in routine. It was a cold declaration of ownership, a blatant act of appropriation. I stood rooted to the door, my fingers cold as I dialed Nathan's number. No answer. I called again, then again, only to hear a long, inaudible ring. Finally, I sent a text, demanding an immediate explanation, but the screen remained blank. No response. Nathan's silence, my trusted brother, turned into a vague fear that grew in my chest. Before I could even cool my anger, I discovered something else that sent a chill down my spine. Olivia had quietly blocked me from receiving any correspondence about the house. Tax bills, insurance papers, important notices, all of which had been sent to my address, were gone. I had received nothing, not a single notice, not a single explanation. It was as if Olivia had deliberately erected a wall of absolute control, blocking all information from reaching me. This was no longer an oversight. This was deliberate, an elaborate plot. Finally, I got Olivia on the phone. I tried to stay calm, my voice shaking just a little as I said, "Olivia, I want to ask about the lock change and the correspondence about the house. I haven't received anything. Is Nathan there?" Her voice came from the other end of the line, smooth and icy. "Oh, Emily, yes, we changed the locks. Nathan and I felt it was necessary to ensure the security of our home. And the mail?" I looked it over. "It's nothing important." I was stunned. "It doesn't matter?" I repeated as if I couldn't believe my ears. "Olivia, those are documents related to my assets. You have no right to see them, much less keep them." Olivia laughed, a dry, triumphant laugh. "Emily, what are you talking about? This is our house." Nathan made that clear to me. He bought it before we got married and we're paying the mortgage together. I have complete control over what happens here. I froze. Nathan said he bought this house? That you two are paying the mortgage? I repeated, the words breaking in my mouth, the pain piercing my heart. And then I understood. Nathan had created a false story, not just to me, but to his wife. He had let Olivia believe that they owned this house, that it was their home, when in reality it was mine, and they were just paying me a token rent. I stood there, my throat tight, my heart filled with betrayal. This was no longer a family affair. This was a stab in the back, from someone I had once believed was my support. I took a deep breath, suppressed my anger, and replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "Olivia, I think there has been a serious misunderstanding. I am the legal owner of this house. Nathan is just a tenant. We have a clear written contract." "A contract?" Olivia laughed again, this time with obvious contempt. "Do you think I'm stupid, Emily? Nathan told me everything. You're just a jealous older sister trying to ruin our happiness. This is his home, and now it's mine." The call ended in a deafening silence. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling as if I had been slapped in the face with a vicious word. Nathan's silence, the lies he had sown in Olivia's heart, had pushed the relationship to the brink of collapse. There was nothing left to hide. The conflict had reached a point of no return. And I knew that if I didn't act now, I would lose everything. My assets, my trust, my dignity. Olivia's decision to change the locks and secretly block all correspondence about the house had woken me up. There was no doubt about it. Every retreat, every attempt to maintain peace had only pushed me further back, bit by bit, until there was nothing left but resentment. The house was my property, the product of years of unsung investment and sacrifice. I could not stand by and watch it become the spoils of their sham play. I decided to act, quietly but decisively. The first step was to repair the roof, which had rotted over time. I contacted a reputable contractor, surveyed the site, and drew up a detailed plan. After a few meetings, I paid a $100 deposit and set a start date for the following week. It was more than just maintenance. To me, it was a clear statement of ownership, an unspoken way of saying, "This house is not yours." I figured, as clueless as Nathan was, Olivia couldn't deny the obvious. But I underestimated her. When I politely announced the arrival of the crew, Olivia did not respond with a single question or concern. She was instantly negative, her voice as sharp as a knife. "No way, Emily. I will not allow anyone to come into our house to fix anything. Nathan and I will decide on our own renovations. You have no right to interfere. You do not live here. You are nothing." I suppressed the rage that was roaring in my chest, trying to maintain a minimum of composure. "Olivia, this is necessary. The roof shows signs of water seepage and rot in the west corner. If not addressed promptly, the damage will spread. I am the legal owner, and it is my responsibility to protect the value of my property." "Owner?" She laughed scornfully. "Do you really believe you have any rights here? We live in this house, pay rent, and make our own decisions. You have no right to make decisions. This is our space, Emily. You should learn to back off and disappear." Her words were like knives piercing my heart, but it wasn't Olivia's brazenness that nearly broke me. It was Nathan's cold silence. I called him, seeking a glimmer of hope, a shred of justice from the brother I once trusted so much. "Nathan, you have to say something," I pleaded. "This house is mine. You know that. I gave the contractor a deposit. If I cancel, I lose my money." I waited for a sympathetic voice, an explanation, a hint of regret. Instead, Nathan just sighed, slow and weary, as if he were reluctantly enduring the call. "Emily, don't screw this up. Olivia is right. I trust her to know what she's doing. The roof repair isn't so necessary that we need to hire someone out. Let us handle it." Cold, alone, he had taken her side, so coolly and so unfeelingly, not caring about the lease, not caring about the facts, not caring about the money I had to pay, not caring about me. With one sentence, he had erased our blood relationship and the work I had done to help him get a place to live. I heard not just indifference in his voice, but fear. He feared Olivia more than he respected me. A few hours later, I received an email. The subject line was sharp. "Stop interfering with our property." The sender was Nathan, but the words were Olivia's. There was no mistaking it. The tone was commanding, the sentence structure cold and inhuman. "Emily, I am ordering you to cease all activities related to this house. Nathan and I are the ones who decide. Any attempt by you to interfere will be considered trespassing. We will not hesitate to take legal action if necessary. This is our home, and we do not want any more help from you." I read each word over and over again, seething. Part of me wanted to smash the phone to the floor, and another part of me ached as if I had just lost something irretrievable. Not just property, but trust, family, and the dignity I had fought so hard to maintain. Nathan had let that woman write for him, speak for him, and make me an outsider in my own story. I had been patient enough. I had been humble, I had been gentle, I had tried not to push things too far. But Olivia didn't stop, and Nathan didn't save me. They thought my silence was weakness. They were wrong. I knew what I had to do, and this time I wouldn't hesitate. No one had the right to take away what I had built. No one had the right to trample on the trust I had placed in them. After peeling back layers of lies, I realized that my silence was only abetting the invasion. It was time to act. The email, sent from Nathan's account, but clearly Olivia's voice, was a clear declaration of war. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had no choice but to back down. I decided to act, not with empty pleas, but with facts. I called the contractor I had canceled the last time and made an appointment for them to come to the bungalow to inspect the rotten roof, ready to start the repair work. And this time, I vowed to myself, I would not back down again. That morning, I arrived a little early. I wanted to look Olivia and Nathan in the eye one last time, give them a chance to face the truth before things got any further. I rang the doorbell, and there was no answer. I knocked hard, and then again, but all I got was cold silence. A wave of frustration rolled through my chest. They were either avoiding me or worse, so disdainful of my presence that they wouldn't even open the door. Just then, the contractor's van pulled up and two men got out, their arms full of tools. I quickly went over, briefly explained the situation, and invited them around to the backyard to begin their inspection. But as we reached the steps, the front door swung open dramatically. Olivia appeared, her face set in anger, and Nathan stood behind her, silent as a ghost. "What are you doing here, Emily?" Olivia hissed, her voice high and shrill, as if she wanted the whole neighborhood to hear. "I told you, you're not to touch our house again." "Olivia, I came to inspect and repair my roof." I emphasized the word, trying to keep my voice calm, though it was starting to shake. "This is my property, and I have every legal right to do so." "Your house," Olivia yelled, her face red with anger and denial. "Are you crazy? This is Nathan and I's house. We live here, we're the landlords. Nathan, tell her." Nathan said nothing. He just stood there, head down, as if drained of life. I looked at him, eyes full of despair and pleading. I wasn't just looking for the truth. I was looking for the brother I trusted, the brother I loved. And then, as if by some cruel twist of fate, the neighborhood watch car rolled slowly by. The guard who had treated me like a stranger the last time got out of the car. There was no need to guess. Olivia had called out to him as soon as I appeared. "What's going on, miss?" he asked, looking at Olivia sternly. "Look at that!" Olivia pointed at me, her voice filled with agitation. "She broke into our house on purpose and brought strangers to destroy it. She insists this is her house when it's ours." The guard turned to me, his eyes filled with suspicion and wariness. "Ma'am, I warned you. If you cannot provide proof of ownership, I will be forced to ask you to leave this area." A burning sensation in my chest. For the second time, I had been treated like an intruder on my own land. But this time, I was ready. I pulled out the carefully prepared documents from my bag: the title deed, the lease signed by Nathan, the property tax bill in my name, each page an undeniable truth. "Here," I said, my voice no longer trembling but cold as steel, handing the documents to the guard. "I am Emily Carter, the sole legal owner of this house. Nathan is just a tenant. And Olivia, she is trying to take my property." The guard flipped through the pages, his eyes changing with each page, from suspicion to shock, then finally understanding. He turned to Olivia, then Nathan, his expression cold. "Ma'am," he said, his voice less polite this time. "According to this document, Miss Emily is the legal owner. Mr. Nathan, is there anything you need to clarify?" All eyes turned to Nathan. He stood there, motionless as a statue, then slowly bowed his head, his shoulders shaking. Olivia looked at him as if he were about to fall off a cliff, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Nathan? Say something. You told me this was our home. Are you lying to me?" And then, what I had been waiting for, the truth that had been buried for so long, was finally spoken. Nathan looked up, his eyes filled with guilt and pain. He looked at me, then at Olivia, then back at the ground as if ashamed of himself. "Emily is the legal owner," he whispered, his voice almost breaking. "I am just the tenant." The confession was like a knife stabbing into Olivia's heart. Her face was pale, her eyes empty. She collapsed in front of everyone, not only because she had been lied to, but because the whole world she had built for so long had turned out to be an illusion. "You lied to me? You lied to me all this time?" she cried, her voice breaking. I stood there, my heart torn between vindication and grief. I had won. Legally, at least. But the victory tasted bitter. I saw the devastation in Nathan's eyes, the despair in Olivia's voice. My brother and I were broken beyond repair. Their marriage was melting like ice under the harsh sunlight of truth. I knew this battle was only just beginning, and the road ahead would not be any easier. The revelation, under the incredulous gaze of the neighborhood watch and the crowd of curious neighbors, marked a climax of unending humiliation. I stood there, feeling as if my very dignity was being crushed under every quiet gossip. My tolerance had reached its limit. I could no longer let them take everything away, my honor and my peace. The very next morning, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. "We need a meeting, immediately," I said, my voice as hard as steel. This time, I wanted more than just ownership. I wanted to expose all the damage, the blatant violations that Olivia and Nathan had caused, before the law and before their consciences. A few days later, the meeting was held at my lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, in downtown Portland. As soon as I stepped into the meeting room, I felt the tension in the air, as if the whole room was holding its breath, waiting for an explosion. Next to me was Mr. Jenkins, a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor and eyes as sharp as a scalpel. Across from him was Nathan, looking disheveled and tired, while Olivia sat next to him, trying to maintain her composure but with a hint of panic in her eyes. Their lawyer, a young woman, sat next to her, her youthful face showing obvious confusion in this harsh atmosphere. Mr. Jenkins began the meeting, his voice calm but firm. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are here to resolve the issues relating to the ownership of X Laurelhurst Road and the disputes arising therefrom. He briefly and firmly outlined the lease between Nathan and me, emphasizing that I was the legal owner, and then laid out the clear evidence of Olivia changing the locks, tampering with the mail, and obstructing the required repairs. When he mentioned illegal improvements, Olivia jumped up as if pricked. "We have the right to improve our house. Nathan told me we're paying the mortgage." Her voice was angry and desperate. Mr. Jenkins turned coldly to Nathan. "Sir, did you tell Miss Olivia that you two were paying the mortgage on the house that Miss Emily owned?" Nathan kept his head down, not daring to look at anyone. I said so," he muttered, as if he had been stripped naked before the crowd. "I didn't want her to think that I was broke." "With nothing?" Olivia screamed, standing up, her face red. "You lied to me. You said the house was ours. You made me believe this was where we were going to start our new life. I did it all for that." Then she turned to me, her eyes filled with rage. "You lied to me. He lied to me. I tried to get a mortgage on this house to pay for the repairs, only to find out I didn't even own it. I went to the loan officer and was flat out denied because my name wasn't on any of the paperwork." The room fell silent. The truth hit like a heavy stone. Even Mr. Jenkins and the young lawyer were stunned. I had never known Olivia to be so reckless. Nathan looked up at Olivia, stunned. You really did that?" "Of course," Olivia cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Do you know how many people I had to beg for money to renovate this place I believed was ours? I borrowed from friends, family, just because I wanted to believe you." "She's right," Nathan said, his voice shaking and desperate. "I was in debt too, like $25,000. I was running around trying to make Olivia believe I could provide, that I could be a husband." The truth, raw and painful, was laid bare in the light of day. Olivia had almost mortgaged a house that didn't belong to her, and Nathan had sunk deeper into debt just to maintain the illusion of happiness. He had concocted a complete lie, and she had believed it so much that it almost led to serious legal consequences. "I can't accept this," Olivia said, her voice choked but determined. Her eyes locked on Nathan, full of hatred and resentment. "I want a divorce. I can't live with someone who's lied to me like this. I feel humiliated. In front of my family, my friends, and myself. It's all a lie." Nathan collapsed into his chair. He buried his face in his hands, silent sobs breaking the silence. Olivia was motionless, tears streaming down her cheeks, her shoulders shaking. A marriage had just broken apart in a room full of cold legal documents. I sat there, torn, angry that Nathan had lied, angry that Olivia had been so reckless. But deep down, I was also hurt. I saw in Nathan's eyes the utter failure of a man who had risked everything to hold on to something he didn't really have. The collapse of that marriage changed everything. This was no longer a matter of property. It was a tragedy of betrayal, of broken trust, and of the painful consequences of dishonesty. Now I was at a crossroads, deciding the fate of the house and wondering, could my blood relationship with Nathan be saved, or had it been forever shattered in the maelstrom of lies? I didn't cry after the lawyer meeting, just a heavy silence that lingered in my chest. The bungalow, once a place of hope and affection, was now a torn body. Broken walls, tangled systems, and worst of all, cracks that no material could mend. Trust and peace. I immediately hired contractors to fix the terrible consequences of Olivia's illegal renovations. They had to remove the broken walls, restore the plumbing that had been carelessly swapped, and fix a series of unreasonable design errors that Olivia had deliberately imposed to make this place her own home. The total cost of the repairs was $10,000. No small sum, but I knew I couldn't let the house be distorted from its original value and form. Every time I see the broken walls and exposed pipes in the middle of my living space, my heart aches. It is not just the loss of property, but the deep scars that have left on my trust in my loved ones. Nathan, after Olivia announced their divorce at the meeting, packed up and left the house. He moved to a smaller, much more modest apartment in another district of Portland. Sometime later, he contacted me. His voice was choked with regret and emptiness. "Emily, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I didn't know what I was doing." I heard the sincerity in those words, but the wound he left in my heart was too deep to forgive easily. However, I also understood that Nathan needed help. He started therapy, a wise and courageous step, to confront the underlying trauma that led him to lie and hide for so many years. The journey was long and difficult, but at least he began to face his true self. I can only hope that one day he will regain the dignity he had lost. Things got even more complicated when Olivia filed for divorce and demanded full reimbursement from Nathan for the cost of the home improvements. She claimed she had invested in a property she believed belonged to her, and Nathan was therefore responsible for all the costs. The lawsuit dragged Nathan into an increasingly serious financial spiral. The $25,000 he had borrowed to please Olivia, combined with the damages Olivia was demanding, left him near bankruptcy. I knew he was struggling, but my heart was no longer in a position to reach out and support him as it had been before. I learned a painful lesson about boundaries and the price of blind forgiveness. When my attorney, Mr. Jenkins, and I went through the divorce records, we discovered something that sent a chill down my spine. Olivia had not only tried to remortgage the house, but had also tried to apply for another loan, this time in my name, using my personal information illegally. Fortunately, that transaction did not go through, but the thought that my assets could have been completely taken away in secret was enough to make me shudder. That reckless and unethical act showed that Olivia was willing to do anything to get what she wanted, regardless of the consequences, regardless of the law. All of this forced me to learn to set clear boundaries. I loved unconditionally, gave my family everything I had, and almost paid the price. I realized that love does not mean allowing others to walk all over you. Nathan, in therapy, began to understand the root of his misbehavior. The fear of not being good enough, the obsession with self-worth, the desire to be accepted at all costs. He gradually realized that it was the pressure he himself created that pushed him into the abyss of hypocrisy. Although the legal disputes surrounding the house have gradually subsided as I regained full ownership, my relationship with Nathan is still full of cracks. There is no magic bullet that can heal emotional wounds overnight. We still talk, but there is an invisible distance, like a thin layer of glass separating two worlds. I know that rebuilding trust takes time, patience, and a persistent effort from both sides. I still hope that one day we can overcome these broken pieces to find the brotherly love that once was close. But today, I understand that even in family relationships, sometimes we need to learn to let go to protect ourselves. Time passed quietly, like a slow river carrying away the wounds of the past. Yet despite the calm on the surface, I knew that some wounds were only covered up, never healed. I returned to work with renewed focus, rebuilding my reputation and my once shattered principles brick by brick. Nathan persisted in therapy, and though the process was as slow as dragging through mud, I sensed a faint light glimmering in him. His divorce from Olivia was still ongoing, messy, expensive, and with no clear end in sight. I thought that all contact between Olivia and I had been closed after all that had happened, but life, like a ruthless director, always has a way of leading us into unexpected twists and turns. One rainy afternoon, I sat in my small apartment in the Alberta Arts District, the place I chose to start over, with a cup of hot tea and an unfinished novel. Suddenly the phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated for a few seconds and then put the phone to my ear. "Hello? Emily, it's Olivia." The voice, which had once evoked in me anger and contempt, now sounded soft, even muffled by shame. I froze for a second. "Olivia, what are you calling for?" My voice was cold as frost, blocking any friendly intentions. I know I'm not qualified," she said, her voice shaking, lacking her usual pride. "But can I see you for a moment? I just want to talk privately." I was instantly on guard. Was this bait? A new way to manipulate public opinion in the divorce? Was she trying to feign guilt to gain an advantage? But there was something about the way she said it that made me flinch. Not out of trust, but with the sense that an old door was suddenly creaking, Not to close, but to ask for a chance to open. I don't think there's anything left to say between us, I replied curtly, though there was a faint, very slight flutter in my heart. Please, please, Olivia pleaded. I know I screwed up. I just want to apologize, really, and make it all clear. And make it. Eh? Finally, I agreed. We arranged to meet at a small cafe, hidden away on a side street. When Olivia walked in, I was momentarily taken aback. She was thin, pale, without makeup or jewelry. Her hair was loose as if she had never combed it. Her eyes were sleepy, and her voice was full of remorse. I'm sorry, Emily, she said as soon as she sat down, as if she feared I would get up and leave if she waited a second longer. I'm sorry for everything. For the lies, for changing the locks, for the way I treated you. I was blinded by ambition, by Nathan's sweet talk. I pressured him into lying. I was terrible. I looked at her for a long time, trying to see through the layers of disguise she had worn to hide herself. This time, there was no more glamour. Just a woman torn by regret, trying to mend something broken. I began to see that she was no longer the Olivia I remembered, the woman who had coldly thrown me out of my own home. She had changed, at least in the way that suffering often makes people look back. I understand that Nathan lied to both of us, Olivia continued, her eyes meeting mine for the first time without averting their gaze. I believed him too easily. I was wrong to check. I was burdened by the expectations of my family, of society, of the shell I built for myself. And I acted like a winner at all costs. I am truly sorry for dragging you into that chaos. Then, as if there was something more difficult waiting to be said, Olivia took a deep breath. Nathan and I are considering reconciliation. We've talked a lot and we both realize our mistakes. And this time, if we're going to continue, it has to be based on the truth. So, we want to ask you something. I looked up, my heart clenched. We want to buy the house back. I almost dropped my teacup. What? We want to buy the old house, she said, her eyes full of urgency. Not to repeat the mistakes, but to start over. Honestly, this time. That house meant so much to Nathan, and now to me. If you're up for it, just make your bid. We'll work it out. I found myself in a state of uncertainty. Part of me wanted to be done with it, to move on from the old hurt. Part of me felt my heart sink, because for the first time, I saw in Olivia something I had never believed she had. Genuine remorse. She was a victim, too, of lies, of herself. And in that battle, no one won. Her offer forced me to confront a choice that went deeper than material value. Would I be generous enough to let go of my resentments and give them a fresh start? Or would I close that door forever, the way people lock up painful memories? The answer didn't come immediately, but I knew it would be a decision that would shape the rest of my life. The final decision about the bungalow was not easy. Olivia and Nathan's offer, though well-intentioned and intended to heal, stirred up a series of painful and confusing memories. I spent many sleepless nights struggling between financial gain and inner peace. The house that had once been a symbol of pride and family was now a shell that held so much unhealed pain. And then, I realized that in order to move forward fully, I needed to let go of all these old attachments. I chose not to sell the house to Nathan and Olivia. Instead, I put it on the open market. The decision was not motivated by revenge or a desire to maximize profits, but simply a way to put the past behind me. I wanted the house to have a fresh start, in the hands of people who were not haunted by past tragedies. The sale went more smoothly than I had expected. The bungalow in the heart of Laurelhurst, with its ideal location and the care I had put into it, quickly attracted buyers. It ended up going to a young couple who saw it as a dream, not a burden. The price was good, and I made a substantial profit. After the formalities were completed, I decided to set aside some of the money to help Nathan pay off his debts. Not because I had forgotten what he had done, but because I did not want to see my son crushed by the consequences of his own weakness. But this time, things had to be clear. We signed a loan agreement with clear terms. the amount, the repayment period, and the nominal interest rate. It was a support, but with responsibility. A new line was drawn between love and self preservation. Nathan and Olivia, after all the turmoil, have decided to continue therapy together. I can't predict their future, but at least they've started over with an honesty they never had with each other before. I hope that from this breakup, they will learn to love in a healthier, kinder way. For my part, I chose to buy a small but poetic apartment in the Alberta Arts District, a colorful and artistic corner of Portland. A new space, no longer haunted by old memories. There, I started over, not with a sad heart, but with a steadfastness that had been tempered through storms. I still loved Nathan, but now I loved myself more. I understood that love should not be exchanged for unconditional sacrifice or self-forgetfulness. I learned to set boundaries not only to protect my assets, but to protect my peace of mind. I realized family is not a place where everything is right or perfect, but where, if lucky, people dare to face mistakes and grow together. Even if it happens in tears, in brokenness, but if there is still a little sincerity, it can still bring resurrection. My story is a valuable lesson in honesty, not just with others, but with myself. It taught me that every relationship, especially a family one, needs clear boundaries, especially when money is involved. Because the subtlety of lies, even the best intentions, can lead to tragedy. But underneath it all, I also learned the most valuable thing: the ability to heal, the ability to forgive, not to forget, but to move on with greater peace. I have been on a challenging journey, from a woman who blindly believes in others to a woman who knows how to take control of her own destiny. I have lost many things, but in return, I have learned more about the value of resilience, of self-respect, and of love that is not bound by vulnerability. True family, in the end, is those who stay by your side, not because they are perfect, but because they dare to admit their mistakes and change with you. That is the most profound lesson I have ever received. And now, I am ready to enter the next chapter of my life, with a peaceful heart and a clean mind.